Continue. So at what point did I miss you?
The window of tolerance.
Okay, so can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the window of tolerance, when you look at this picture, does student A or student B have more stress in their life?
I would say based on what I'm seeing, because again, my phone is really small.
Yes.
So yeah, I would say student B has more stress.
Yes, student B definitely has more stress, is bringing more stress into the classroom. And the breaking point is right there. So these are the students who maybe while they're getting something in the classroom or coming into the classroom, somebody brushes up against them. They have they're ready to, what are you doing? Get away from me. And they're ready to fight. Or this is the student that when you ask them a question and they may not know the answer, that they might get emotional or they might shut down and put their head down and refuse to answer. So the message here is that while student A doesn't have to work as hard to keep themselves together at school because they have a lower level of stress.
Okay.
B has to work very hard to keep themselves together because they don't have a lot of room. Because what they're just dealing with on a day-to-day basis, a moment-to-moment basis, says, I don't have a lot of room for you to add any extra stress to my life. So we have to recognize that the window of tolerance is different for our students from hard places than from students who haven't experienced those adverse childhood experiences. So the question then is, who do we respond to? You can see that picture there.
Yes.
It's a goldfish that we can see in the water, and on top of the water, we see a shark.
Yeah.
When our students are exhibiting their challenging student behaviors, we kind of see them being sharky. They have sharky behavior. But are they really sharks or are they goldfish? So I want for you to think, we can do this together. Put your hand up. This is going to be your brain, okay? So this is our brain. This is the brain stem. This right here is the amygdala. Our thumbs are our amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of the brain that wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep us alive.
Okay.
The part that says fight, flight, freeze if we're unsafe.
Okay.
The base layer of the brain, this is our survival mechanisms, our ability to just kind of do our day in and day out. Up here, more concrete thinking down here. Up here is our critical thinking, our higher levels of thinking.
Okay.
Our brain together, our amygdala goes down here, lower part of our brain. And we call this the downstairs brain, Dave Siegel does. And up here is our upstairs brain, and it folds over. So our hand here, put together in this way, says, guess what? This brain is ready to learn. We're ready to go.
Okay.
What happens if something, a trigger or that window of tolerance is getting real close to hitting its brain? That little amygdala starts wiggling and says, fight, flight, freeze. Oh my goodness, I need to stay safe, All of a sudden, our upstairs brain flips out and says, I can't critically think. I can't do a math problem right now. I may not even be able to have a conversation with you. I need to be safe.
Oh, wow.
And so we have to remember that while our upstairs brain is flipped, if you imagine this kind of looks like a shark going through the water, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But we have to remember that shark fin is what kids are doing to keep themselves safe. And we need to respond to the goldfish if we want our fins to come back down and for our brains to be ready to learn. So then what do we do? So let's get practical. The reality is that it's hard. It's hard work as teachers, because guess what? We might have our own adverse childhood experiences. And then we have our students who are connecting with us, and we get secondary trauma and compassion fatigue from working with them. And so we need to put on our own oxygen mask first. Just like when we're on a flight, we've got to take care of ourselves. And we've got to allow God to take care of us too. And so connecting regularly with God and others, engaging in regular self-care is incredibly important. We also need to teach our students social emotional learning. That little hand gesture from Dave is something that you can teach all of your teachers and all of your students. Little preschool students are able to understand that they flipped their lid, that they're no longer in control. It is not during this, when your brain's integrated and there's misbehaviors, that's when there's I won't listen to you, right? I won't do what you're asking me to do. When the brain has flipped the lid, I can't. I physiologically can't do what you're asking me to do. My biology will not let me. And so we have to help reintegrate. And helping our students understand that process will help them. And so we can do that through social emotional learning. That's part of helping them learn that self-management and self-awareness, helping them learn the responsible decision-making and building those relationship skills. So tools that we can take for impactful classroom management means that we need to embed that social emotional learning.
It's got to start at 7. I turned it on at 10 minutes to 7, and it's in full swing.
Hi, welcome.
Hello.
We're glad that you joined us. We're on Eastern Standard Time, and we are recording the video, so we're so glad to have you with us. We'll do a short pause. I'm Dr. Charity Garcia, and my colleague Michael Gale is here, and we've had some people join us. What's your name and where are you from? Hello?
Yes, hello. Go right ahead.
Well, we welcome you to join us and hang out afterwards, and we're happy to talk with you. We are recording this so it can be seen later as well. So we'll go back to the principles for impactful classroom management for now. So the idea that we're embedding social emotional learning in all of our content areas and all of our classrooms, that we not only teach it, but we practice it. Michael talked about the power of relationship. I talked about seeing the goldfish, not just the shark. And that commitment, relentless commitment to providing unconditional positive regard. There's absolutely nothing that you can do that will make me look at you in a negative way, because you are a child of God. That we always empower and never disempower, allowing our students voice and choice, them a voice in their situations. If you think about that list of adverse childhood experiences, that is a very disempowered experiences. And so we want to help our students. We want to maintain those high expectations while providing the support and instruction to help them meet them. So when we look at that, we want to validate children's life experiences in non-judgmental, practical ways. So as they go about their day and they begin to share with us some of those life experiences of maybe their parents are getting divorced, or they're experiencing homelessness, or they have somebody that's close to them struggling with a mental illness or incarcerated, instead of going, oh, watch your gestures, watch your face, ask the Lord to help you be non-judgmental and just validate that the fact that they're living it has value. Their experience has value. Keep predictable schedules, routine, cues, and formats. So the more that you can keep things predictable and the same, the less students feel that stress level increase, and therefore they have a greater level of tolerance to deal with other things going on in the classroom than having to keep up with what's changing and new things. So we know that sometimes change happens in a classroom, but as soon as you know something's going to change, You need to let them know. You've got to provide it in writing. You've got to post it up on that board. Even if you're doing a call and response to get your students involved. You know, some people say Scooby-Doo, and maybe their students respond, eyes on you, right? So whatever those things are, just be consistent. Practice transitions. Transitions are so difficult for our students, including our high school students. You know, I was reading something yesterday, and when we look at the emotional range of our students, we may have a student that has had high adverse childhood experiences. You need to take their chronological age and half it, and that's typically their developmental age, or that's a good rule of thumb. So if you have a 16-year-old that's gone through quite a bit of adverse childhood experiences or is currently living that, they are emotionally capable, particularly when they're in fight, flight, and freeze, of responding as if they are 8 years old. And so just recognizing that the amount of practice of transitions that you would give an 8-year-old is what you need to give your high schoolers. Help students develop an emotional vocabulary. You may have heard, if you can name it, you can tame it. They don't know what to call their emotions. They don't know what disgust compared to anger, compared to hate, compared to, they don't know what those look like or what to name them. So use that. Use that in your literature classes, in your Bible stories, and their emotions that they express about difficulty in your content area. Be playful. Like, this is serious stuff, but play. Enjoy being with your students. And when they begin to act out, playfully engage them first and offer them a redo. Like, I know you can do better than that. Show me what you got. Try it again. Incorporate calm down spaces or peace corners. In the upper right hand part of the slide, you can see a peace corner. It's just a cozy space for kids to be able to go to dismiss themselves if they're not feeling safe. That's helping them self-regulate. I'm not feeling safe, and I know that I can go to this space without having to ask permission or use my words, and I can calm down. And there's things that I can do there. I might just need to put on my canceling headphones. I might need to blow some bubbles. I might need to hug a bear. Those sorts of things can be incredibly powerful. Also, provide children and youth with time to regain their composure before asking them to use language to explain their behavior. We talked about how the upstairs brain has the language capacity, the critical thinking ability. You have to allow their brains the time to come back into an integrated format before they can use language to explain their behavior. So it's not that we don't have the conversation, we just let the brain come back together so that we can have an intentional and productive conversation. And we need to encourage physical activity. There is never a reason, and never is a big statement, but if you look at the research out there, there is never a reason to take away recess. In fact, physical engagement raises the good hormones in your body that allow students, and ourselves for that matter, to be able to deal and cope with the stress that they are under and to help solve the problems effectively. We're wanting to combat that negativity bias. Remember when we looked at the picture of that negative Bernstein picture? Having a look at that, that's a negativity bias. It's expecting the world to be a bad place because that's your lived experience of the world, is it's not safe. So the more that we can combat that by drawing children's attention to what's going well in school, at least once a day. So what's going right? Help them to be able to see that. Increase children's capacity to tolerate unpleasant sensations. Not everything in life is happy, right? So we have to build up our tolerance like a muscle by providing them with strategies for redirecting their attention, self-regulating. That's part of that calming corner. Training their resilience muscles. And these 4 open-ended questions are so fantastic. I have used them from elementary school to college level, and they work. So having them regularly respond to 4 open-ended questions. Right now I have. What are my resources in front of me? I am a statement about a statement or belief about themselves. I can, with data-driven proof of performance. I can do 2-digit multiplication. I can do basic algebra. I can find the books of the Bible. And I like, where they get to state their preferences. Doing that often builds the resilience muscles of our students. So we also want to help them build the resilience by knowing what in the world they're doing. So we want to do an engine check. So for elementary grades, you can, have like, okay, my heart's too slow. I'm a little sleepy. I'm not really awake. I'm under-aroused. I'm not ready to go. Or I'm just right. I'm calm. I'm ready to learn. Or my heart is beating too fast. I'm overexcited. I'm angry. I'm not ready to learn. And then we can help them by doing some strategies to help get them ready to that middle spot. Now with high school students, you can do an engine check, but I just use the green, middle school and high school, I use the red, green, yellow light system, and it means the same sorts of things. So for those people, for all of them, but if anyone needs to calm down, if they're stuck in the brainstem here and they're on like that red light, I cannot learn, and I'm telling you that, then we as educators need to help them get their bodies regulated so that they can learn. And so we can belly breathe. So we're not gonna do all of these, but I'd like for you guys to do this one. Put your hand on your chest, put your hand on your belly. Take a breath. Which hand moved more?
Chest.
Your chest. Okay, now I want you to blow out all your air like you're being held underwater, and take another breath and try it again, see what happens.
Yeah, the belly.
The belly. So the belly, when we belly breathe, that's cleaning out all the oxygen, gives us more good oxygen, and that helps get more oxygen to our brain and helps calm down those fight, flight, and freeze responses. If your students, after giving them that, breathe out and tell, if they're not able to do it, have them lace their hands behind their head or reach their hands back as far as they can behind their back and try breathing. You can only belly breathe in this position.
Okay.
Because it opens your rib cage and it forces the air to come from your belly, and that can help your students. You can also have them box breathe. Draw a box and breathe. So you breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Count of 4 on each side. I don't know about you, but even in that few seconds, I'm like, oh, I'm ready for bed. It helps to relax because I was not in a red zone. In a yellow zone, so that's the mid part of the brain that we're calming down. So that's kind of like, I'm not ready to go, but I'm also not super overexcited or super angry. Stretching, crossing the body's midline prepares the brain for learning. Isometric, so pushing your palms against each other hard, can help. Focusing strategies. So those were calm down strategies. For focusing strategies, notice we can't focus if we're on red. If we're like all the way gone, we're not trying to focus. We're just trying to calm the body down. If we're to the point that has gotten to the point that we're now on yellow, then we can throw a ball up in the air and have our students clap as soon as they see the top. And it's fun because you can throw it way up or you can be super fast and they get really focused in. Scissors and winks. Wink with your right eye, but with your left hand, make a scissors motion at the same time and then switch it and do it again. I have yet to be able to master that one. Energizing strategies. If they're just lethargic and they can't just, I don't want to do anything, have them do chair sit-ups. Push down on the side of the chair and hold themselves up, or push up and down. And all of a sudden that kind of wakes your body up ready to learn. And so those are some pieces, and we can talk through some others here with you all. But those are some practical things that you can do. And then when we think, going back to that relationship piece is the largest piece of everything. We can have all the strategies in the world, but if we don't have relationship, we don't have what we need. Because transformation comes through relationship. Healing, while the types of adverse childhood experiences we just talked about all happened through a disconnect in relationship, which means healing has to happen in relationship. And if we're here to help bring transformative opportunities into our students' lives in our classroom management, we need to display that through relationship and connection. We want to always connect before we correct. Always connect before you correct. And so when we do that, here's this lovely quote from Ellen White. And every human being discerned infinite possibilities. He saw men as they might be, transfigured by his grace. Looking upon them with hope, he inspired hope. Meeting them with confidence, he inspired trust, and they longed to prove themselves worthy of his regard. What a beautiful example we have in our master teacher. When we have that relationship, our students long to prove themselves worthy of our regard. And it's a beautiful gift.
It is.
That this is helpful to you, and I would love to hear from both of you and take your questions.
Wow, that was a very informative and presentation. I just feel that what you're saying is so important for us to do as teachers, and that is to connect before correcting. And there's always this fear, as I mentioned earlier, that people or students will confuse or interpret your kindness for weakness, and you want to treat them and think about them and work with them in a manner that treats them as though they're democratic and God created individuals, and there's this fear. And I guess teachers, if you look at it, need also to understand their biases, if you will, and the challenges that they themselves have had in life, and what prevent them from actually treating students the way that you just recommend that students be treated. And so yes, there is this component where we need, and I think there's also this area where we need as teachers to be able to be vulnerable, if you will, to be able to treat students the way that you just described.
Well, and I mean, if you think about our humanity, right? We're human too. We have horrible days. Are we asking from our students more than what we would ask from ourselves?
Somewhat. Somewhat. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, as far as compassion, right? Like when we're having a really hard moment, even if the people around us don't understand, it's really nice to have someone who's in charge. Like it's not all like take the rope and go crazy, right? Because we care about you. We're creating those boundaries. We are going to correct before we correct. The correction is happening. And so you can trust the boundaries that are here. We are predictable. We're going to respond regularly same ways so that you know that these boundaries are still here. And so, it's not permissive, but it's kind.
Yeah. You mentioned something about the 4 open-ended questions. And I wanted to ask you about those.
Sure.
When exactly do you use those 4 open-ended questions?
All the time.
All the time?
All the time.
All the time. When I was teaching 16 to 24-year-olds that had actually dropped out of high school and were coming back to kind of alternative ways of finishing up their high school diplomas, once an hour.
Once an hour. Okay. Can you?
So, I mean, I don't think it can be overdone. The students got to the point where they were like, oh, Ms. G, like we've done this. And I'm like, oh, good. Then you're brilliant at it. Show me how. But that's when, seriously, I've had, just in the last week, I've had 2 students reach out to me and they're like, I got in a really tough situation. Like now they're parenting and they're working and they're, doing life. And like, I got in this really tough situation. And you know what I did is I started freaking out. And then I thought, okay, I'm flipping my lid. I need to take a deep breath. I need to do some calming things. And I need to ask myself those 4 questions.
Okay, I hate to ask you this, but can you describe a situation, for instance, where you used those for open-ended questions? Did you do them in the middle of a lesson when a student misbehaved, or did you use them, on a one-on-one situation?
So I didn't typically use them in the middle of a lesson unless the lesson was so far off its rails it just needed to start.
Yeah, of course.
So I typically would do it at the end of a lesson when I was looking at what were our learning goals or our learning objectives for the day. And or at the beginning of the next lesson when I knew what we were going to do was hard and I wanted to remind them that they did know something and they did have voice in my classroom. And so I kind of have used it as a bookend, either at the beginning or the end or sometimes both. And I have used it on like a small group or one-on-one. I've used it both. So since you asked for a specific story, I can share with you a high school girl that I had, and I used to be an English teacher, amongst other things, and we were studying public speaking. And she was terrified. She did not want to do public speaking at all. And so I'm going to pull up those questions again. Let me just get them up for myself. And basically I said, okay, let's just take a minute and breathe. And I said, okay, here's this public speaking. We're going to be resilient. What do you have? And she was like, well, I have my bullet points. I have my notes. And I'm like, great, you have a resource. You have your bullet points, you have your notes. I am, and a positive statement about self, or just a statement at all. And she's like, I am terrified. The fact that she could name her emotion helped to start taming that emotion.
Okay.
I can, and there was data-driven proof of performance. So I can say this to myself in the mirror. I've gotten that far. I can say this to my best friend. I can say this to my teacher. Like that, those are things that she has done before. So it's establishing, I have done some of this. And then this is where it's fun. I asked her to, I like and to state her preferences. And she just was funny and silly at that moment. She said, I like penguins. And oh, great. When you are doing this speech tomorrow or the next day in class, I want you to pretend like every single one of us are penguins.
Mercy.
And you know what? That calmed her down so much because she realized she had her notes. She had the capacity to say this in the mirror and to me and to a friend. And she knew that she liked penguins. And so she could use her love of penguins, her preference, her stated preference, to help her transition to then using those skills that she did have to share it with the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So could I just add something to that?
Yeah.
So those questions in the context that we've been talking about have great positive effect for students. Let's connect that though to the put on your oxygen mask first, right? So as a daily practice, I think it's really important for us to make that connection with God and ask those questions of ourselves before we go into the classroom, before we go into the school. Understand where we are in any given moment and think reflectively, what am I bringing into this situation? Who am I? Who is the person that God created me to be? Here are the things that I can do, right? And what is it that really motivates me, and what is it that I really see in my students? What are those things that positively that I like about being here and doing this with these students, right? I find that that's a really, really powerful way, and it really needs to happen daily, I believe. So you're coming into that context ready to meet those challenges.
And because you've talked about maybe having a little, I mean, in high school, they're transitioning to different classes, and some classes you have more connection with than others, or have more classroom management challenges than others. So doing it every day to start your day is wise. I would recommend teachers doing this at the beginning of, like, as they're transitioning themselves to the next class, particularly their most challenging behavior management class. Ask those questions. They're empowering questions to ask. What can you do? What is data-driven evidence that works? And be like, oh, I do know something. We don't have to play chess against our students. We can invite them to play on the same side, and then we play chess against whatever trauma they've experienced, whatever powers and principalities that are at work in our classrooms and in their lives and our schools. We just need to recognize it's not bad that we play chess, but our kids and ourselves have to play on the same side against all that other stuff, and know that the Holy Spirit and God are playing on our side too.
Wow. And so, of course, I'm currently doing my my doctoral studies, and I guess my brain is working in this way. You mentioned the fact that you showed a video or the images of the 3-year-old brain. One, of course, is significantly larger than the other. And so, have you seen, I guess I wouldn't say any scientific study, but in longitudinal study where this methodology, this method that you are discussing, have you done any kind of study on it to see the long-term effect or the impact it has had on student behavior in the classroom? Does it significantly change as a result of the implementation of this practice?
Yes. So there's becoming, it's very new, so it's very new, and yet it's as old as the Lord's methods, right?
Of course.
So in more recent worlds, yes. So it's called trauma-informed schools, trauma-sensitive schools, trauma-aware classroom management. There's a lot of different names out there. One of the resources that you can look at for the ways in which entire districts are doing this, and doing this very well, the movie Paper Tigers turned around a very aggressive, high trauma high school in Walla Walla, Washington.
Okay.
It is, and Washington State as an entire state is now considered to be a trauma-informed state of school districts.
Okay.
There is on Edutopia, if you just go into Edutopia and type trauma-informed, and there are multiple articles and videos. In Tennessee is heavily pursuing a trauma-informed perspective. Those are the two that I know there's just of resources out there for that you can find, and that we can share when we send out this link. The link will be shared out either tomorrow or Monday, and we'll make sure to some of the links to those resources.
Okay. Wow, this has been, and so the movie is called Paper Tigers.
Paper Tigers. Paper Tigers is a great place to start. If you go to acesconnection.com, there's adverse childhood experience material there. There's a Beyond Consequences Institute that looks at trauma-sensitive practices in classrooms and in social work. But there is a Trauma-Sensitive Schools Conference. One just happened, so that was the 2 a year for them, and then they just started doing one out in DC. So it's a growing field because people are seeing its impact in the most challenging of situations.
Yeah, and there's just so much to say, and I know you're sharing out the video, and so I'm not going to say too much. because of course my colleagues will be watching this video as well. But I'm beginning to see that many of our students have experienced some significant traumas in their lives,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't feel comfortable, and they don't have confidence to share what they've gone through. And the truth of the matter is that, as you said, what we see is the fin out of the water and not the goldfish beneath the water, and we respond more often than not to the fin as opposed to the goldfish. And that being cognizant of that at all times is, I guess, this is a challenge for teachers to be able to at all times see the goldfish and address the goldfish, so the fin can basically turn into the fin of the goldfish, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so two things I'll speak to with response to that. One is in becoming more trauma informed, and I would say healing centered, because we're here to help develop healing with Christ, right? Not just get taught in the trauma world, is to recognize that that's a journey that we as professionals have to go on as well.
Okay.
So, we're probably the kid who frustrates us the most is really a beautiful package, a beautiful gift wrapped in really ugly paper that we're not quite sure we want to unwrap, but our responses say more about us than it does about the kid.
Okay.
We have to do that work on ourselves. And we also need to be really compassionate. So, school administrators and so on, it's not just about supporting your kids with trauma, it's recognizing teachers have a very challenging role because they have trauma themselves. And working with my trauma and your trauma are coming together, right? And so administrators need to come from a place of compassion for their teachers and create safe spaces for their teachers to tap out for a minute and go take a breather and come back in with no shame and no judgment.
Wow.
And so how can we, both as school administrators, as teachers, work together to be compassionate with each other? Because we're all on the journey to healing. And isn't that really a redemptive model?
It is. And I'm always looking at that. I guess I can hear my colleagues asking this one question. What about that child, hypothetically, that has not experienced any trauma in life, but, if you will, is still a problem child?
How do you know?
Well, we don't know, and I guess that's
the point. Is it's not our jobs to become investigators or detectives or social workers. We're here to be teachers. We need to lane, but we do need to recognize that it's not our job to know the kid's trauma. We don't need to go figure that out.
Okay.
We need to assume that if these challenging student behaviors are there, that we need to look beyond the behavior to see the need and then respond to that need.
Okay.
So we got to trust that we have our role. And while it's nice and it helps us to have compassion if we have some sort of idea of what's going on, we may not know. And we may never know. That's God's business.
Yeah.
But what's beautiful, and you talk about, the studies and so on, what studies have shown is that what works, those different suggestions that we're talking about in behavior management, classroom management, for the children that need it the most, that are acting out the most or withdrawing the most, those same strategies are seen as positively impactful, even for the kids that don't have ACEs. So we're not damaging our kids in any way, any of our kids in any way. We're just lifting all boats.
Okay. Wow. It takes courage to implement the model. Yes, it takes, I can see it because I do it. Sometimes I do flip out
You flip your lid, but isn't it great to be able to say that?
Like today, to be honest with you, I flipped the lid. This young man put his AirPod in his ear, and I flipped the lid. At the time, I just wanted to reassert my authority in the classroom, if you will. But then he came back to me at the end of the class, and he said, "Mr. Brown, I'm sorry." And that was, I just felt that was so, I mean, I felt foolish at the time to actually do what I did, but it just showed me, as you just said, that it's sometimes okay for you to pull the child aside and have that one-on-one with the child, and not embarrass the child or put the child on, or the student on Front Street, if you will.
Yeah, I think we would very much recommend that you don't put your. That's a great way to put them in a corner. And let me tell you, any of us get in a corner, we're going to scrap our way out.
Of course.
So the more that you can not put them on the spot, the better.
Yeah. Wow. And like this has been a wonderful sacrifice, listening to this presentation. And I honestly wish I could package you and Michael and just bring it to school and have you present to our staff, because this is something that we really need.
We're open to that.
You are.
At least via Zoom, I am.
Okay, and we can set it up. I know I have to speak to Dr. Lashley, I'm pretty sure. By the way, I'm an alma mater. My Andrews University is my alma mater. I attended school there, and so I would love for you to do a presentation to our faculty, because we have some serious needs that we need to address, and the teachers are basically at their wits' end. To me, they're almost ready to give, and they can't wait till May comes to say, well, let's just leave and go home right now. Just can't wait. And it becomes problematic when the teachers are waiting for May more. Can't wait for May to come here more than the students. And so that's what I find, that we are on edge right now, because we've been with the kids almost 180 days, and we're like, oh, can we just end already? And so I would love to have this resource available to them, so they can have that the resources necessary to deal with the problem child, and to see how to deal with those fight, flight, and responses that you just discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that if you guys are interested, I know I am, and I regularly join via Zoom faculty meetings or kind of question periods across the United States and the world. So it's a fairly inexpensive way to get that sort of training. And here at Andrews, we're here to serve our teachers out in the it's not a separate, you get done with Andrews or you never came to us and we don't have anything to give. This is part of our ministry too. And so there is that. There's also another resource happening in early August called Trust-Based Relational Intervention for Teachers, so TBRI for Teachers. So we can send the link out to that as well. I think it's for like $100 a site. You can have a live simulcast for your teachers for an entire one-day training in trust-based relational intervention for classroom. So there are good things that are happening, and that's through the Child's Development Center at Texas Christian University.
Interesting. And if you don't mind, Dr. Michael and Dr. Charity, to get your contact information and
sure.
Of course the link to this video. And so I will definitely send this out because as I said, I really want to help my teachers to deal with some of the challenges that they're experiencing in the classroom. And I think there's so much I can say right now. It's just wild. The kids are considered as wild, and so I'll just wait to get your contact information and see if we can make it happen. A faculty meeting at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, 3:45, and I'm pretty sure the teachers will be there to watch the video.
Okay. Mike, what thoughts do you have here as we're ending?
You know, as I've listened to you, Howard, and as I've thought about my own experiences I think that you have a unique opportunity to have an impact in children's lives, and it's understanding, as Charity has said, it's understanding where they're coming from, right? And you don't have to know every little detail, but you have to know that their trauma, their experiences have been set in a context of the spiritual forces of darkness trying to separate them from the love of God.
Mm-hmm.
And we as teachers are agents, co-agents with the Holy Spirit to bring these young people back into that relationship with God. And so taking that time to reflect on your own experience and being really fueled up to go into the classroom every day. And I like what Charity said. I had not heard this suggestion before, but I really like it. Taking that time, even between classes.
Yeah, that was
right.
beautiful. Yeah.
Right. Taking that time between classes to just fuel up and reconnect, to ask those questions, to pray and to survey the landscape, if you will, and then going in, that is so important. And as you mentioned, coming out of that encounter curriculum, I believe that one of the most important aspects of that curriculum is the transformation of the individual, beginning with the teacher, right? Beginning with the teacher. Let's not foist all of this on our students and say, what's wrong with you, right? But let's say, who are you? Who has God made you to be? Who am I? Who has God made me to be? And let's get there. Let's get there together, right?
Yeah. Okay, and I appreciate that, Dr. Michael. And Dr. Charity, there's one last question I need to ask. Then, Dr. Michael, you can answer this question. Can you describe one of your worst encounters in the classroom? A problematic child, a problematic student, something that happened in the classroom, and how you dealt with that using. I know you described the experience of the young lady who was suffered from stage fright, and she was able to, as a result of your intervention, see should I say, students as penguins.
Yes.
All right. All right. So, but for the most part, what we're experiencing, can you describe a challenging situation and exactly how you dealt with it, and what came as a result of your intervention?
Sure. I'll let Michael go first.
Well, I'll just say that my going from this trauma-based, trauma-informed approach, I had a student who got to the point where he didn't want to continue in life, and right, and that became evident not only to me but his classmates, and there was some both self harm and harm to others. And I'll just have to say that using these strategies, and really moving from a place from what's wrong with you to what's right with you, right? And moving in that direction, we were able to really walk through the thing to the point where I know that he's okay.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say that. I mean, I don't know, you know, I don't want to give all the particulars
Of
because,
course.
you know, but I know it works.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And that's maybe some people would say maybe that's extreme, but it really, I mean, you don't know what these students have gone through and are bringing into your, and just taking that perspective that I'm going to get to what's right with you, and we're going to work from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So as Michael was talking, gave me time to think. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
for a story, I'm going to share about a middle school student. I was working on a. I'm trying to not give too many particulars, so you can't.
Of course.
I was working in a middle school, a small 3-teacher school with a Native American tribe. And I had a particular student who loved to draw, but didn't love to do anything else, and was very withdrawn, was not engaged in schoolwork. There just wasn't any interest except for drawing. And so I was able to use these strategies, everything from engine checks to helping label emotions to having a corner, calming corner to go to, and doing redos and having playful engagement and the whole kit and caboodle. And I didn't know what had happened as far as trauma. His family appeared on the surface to be a great family, more socioeconomically stable than many of the other students in the school. And so he was very withdrawn, which for me, I tend to work very quickly and connect very quickly with very aggressive students. So I have had students who have pulled knives and thrown chairs and
wow.
And that, all of those things. And that's a world like that student. I feel like, ooh, you love, like you haven't given up, you're fighting. Like you're hurt and you're fighting for what you care about. And ooh, I can connect with that. So I could tell many stories about students like that. However, the more withdrawn students are more difficult for me because I'm like, oh, but you've given up. Like, how do I help get this out and passion back? And so, just slowly getting to know them, getting to know this particular student before and after class. I purposefully bought my own sketch pad, and I am not a drawer.
Wow.
I him some charcoal pencils, and we used them together at recess and drew some pictures, and he'd teach me what he knew, and I kind of gave him voice and value for what he had to contribute. And that resulted in him later having a very difficult family situation where a mother's boyfriend was abusive to the mom, and he witnessed that regularly to the point that they had stopped the car, and the stepfather boyfriend was out with his hands around the mother's neck. And there was a baby brother in the back seat, and this particular student took the baby brother out of the back seat, unbuckled it, and used the car seat to hit the boyfriend over the head. And the mom gasped for air, and her first response was, "You shouldn't have done that. Why did you do that? He's your father." And so those are lots of complex situations. But all of the trauma-informed practices in my classroom went from a student who would not say how he felt, would not engage in academics, was very angry at God and wasn't quite sure that there was a God, to coming back to school, and because the trust had been built, sharing that with me, knowing that I was a safe place that was not going to judge him, and was not going I was going to do what I had to do as far as calling the authorities and
of course,
our mandatory reporters. But we made that call together, and did that, and have continued. That particular student because he saw that I was invested in all of him. Began to do quite well in schoolwork, completed college.
Wow.
Wonderfully employed, still loves to draw. And we are Facebook friends. And there have been many times in his life where hard things have happened, and he reaches out.
Wow.
And so it wasn't just for, some of our students were there for a season, and some of our students were family, and we're there for. And he told me about 2 years ago that he had just finally used up those pencils that I gave him in 7th grade.
Wow.
And he was going through a really hard time, and I got his address and I sent him a new set.
Wow.
So that level of connection exists beyond the few months, the 180 days that sometimes are so hard to get through. Those connections exist beyond that. They're eternal. They're transformative. That wasn't just transformative for that student. That was hugely transformative in my own life. Part of his story is why I became a foster parent. We have to recognize that our classrooms are wonderful opportunities for reciprocity to happen. We aren't the only experts in the room. Our students are experts too.
Wow.
Experts in their content areas of focus and their passion areas, and they're experts in their own lives. So there's an innate respect that we bring to our students.
Wow.
Kids that are coming from the hardest places, sometimes I would start my class by just saying, you showed up today. You might be tired and hungry and angry and distracted, but you showed up. Give your hand. Like there's a certain amount of unconditional positive regard, this relentless hope. You will succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful.
So those are some stories for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to wrap this thing up. And we will share out. And to the person that joined us, we would have loved to have heard from you. If you will, in our chat box or to the email that you got, letting you know that this was happening. If you'd somehow let us know your email address so that we can respond directly to you and answer your questions and offer you support as well. We would love to do that. And like I said, this will be coming out probably, in all honesty, by the time we get some things together early next week. So we get the references that we've been referring to and our contact information so you can follow up with us. Keep an eye out for that. It should be coming from the same person that sent out the email. We have a fantastic graduate assistant that sends those out. And so be on the lookout for that as well. And thank you for the opportunity to share with you, and thank you for sharing with us.
Well, thank you very much. I was really blessed by this presentation. Thank you very much for the ministry that you guys do.
You are very welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
All right. Well, have a wonderful evening, and God bless you.
Take care.